Good afternoon, everyone. The words, "you have Parkinson's," have changed your life. For some of you, it is fresh, raw, and startling news, often poorly told. Others may have grown more accustomed to this over the years. Some of you have loving support of friends and family. Others may feel very alone. For everyone who hears those words, life is indeed forever changed. Welcome to the 20th Lunchtime Chat with Sandy. I have called this chat the emotional roller coaster, the ups and downs of Parkinson's. I hope that you have found the first 19 of these chats helpful, and that you have taken away at least one thing from each chat that you didn't know before, or possibly a new coping strategy for an issue that has been challenging you for some time. As I was trying to decide what to talk to you about today, I was looking back over the topics I have covered in the past, such as motor and non-motor symptoms, medications, how to prepare for a trip to the hospital, and research, just to name a few. And I realized that there is one topic I have never spoken to you about, the emotional impact that receiving the diagnosis of Parkinson's has had on you. Not only those of you who have Parkinson's, but on those of you who have partners and spouses, as well as other family members and friends. I have always believed that Parkinson's is a family affair, and I mean that in the broadest sense of the word. Over the years, I have spoken to thousands of people living with Parkinson's, and although some details about your path may be a bit sketchy, there is one detail I'm sure that is very clear. Regardless of how long ago you sat in your doctor's office and heard him or her say, "You have Parkinson's," I'm fairly certain many of you can remember the date, month, and year that happened. You probably don't remember much else about that day, except that it might have seemed like the longest day in your life. From that day to this, you have and will continue to experience a number of emotions, ranging from disbelief to anger, from worry to despair. Some of you may remember feeling some relief at finally having received a diagnosis, Parkinson's, especially when you thought you may have a brain tumor or something like ALS. But regardless of how you felt, you had an emotional reaction. So putting all the emotions together, particularly if you try to ignore them in the hope that they will magically disappear, is a recipe for disaster and will have a huge impact on your ability to live well with Parkinson's. What I'm hoping to do today is to normalize these emotions for you, help you to come to terms with them, and realize that you are not alone, that you're not going crazy, and most importantly, you have the right to express how you feel, and it is not something you should be ashamed of. I realize that this is a topic that not everybody is comfortable talking about, which was why it's a good topic, I think, for a chat like this. You're in your own home, either listening on your phone or on your computer, where no one can see you and where you feel safe. Talking about your feelings can be frightening. It can leave you feeling vulnerable to the reactions of others, and as a result, your feelings may remain hidden. Doctors are, of course, focused on managing and treating your motor and even your non-motor symptoms, and they tend to ignore the other aspects of your well-being. As a result, you may conclude, Well, if my doctor doesn't ask me how I'm feeling about having Parkinson's, then I guess my feelings don't really matter. And if no one else broaches the subject with you, you may decide that that's a taboo topic which should not be discussed. Or, if you are thinking that it's just your problem and that no one else is experiencing the same feelings, then think again. That's simply not the case. The news bulletin, "You have Parkinson's," came as a blow to everyone, and everyone deals with this news in their own way. So whether your diagnosis came like a sucker punch out of nowhere, or as a long-awaited acknowledgement that there actually is something physically wrong with you, you are not merely crazy. It is indeed a stressful time. Many folks put on a brave face and say, well, it could be a lot worse. While that is certainly true, and having a positive attitude is critical to finding ways to cope with the challenges of Parkinson's, even the most optimistic person will have moments when he or she needs to grieve for everything that Parkinson's has or might take away. I clearly remember one of the things that Michael J. Fox said after disclosing the fact that he had Parkinson's to the world back in 1998. He said, "Parkinson's is a condition that just keeps on taking." And I'm sure many of you can identify with that statement. We normally associate the word grief with the loss of a loved one. And while that loss is very painful, there is an end. The grief and losses that go with it tend to be time-limited. Grief is also a reaction to something like a divorce, the loss of a job, the loss of an important relationship, the loss of your family pet. With Parkinson's, however, the losses tend to be unending, and they are multiple and sometimes permanent, and therefore can be difficult to come to terms with. You have all experienced the death of some hopes, some dreams, and some plans. New hopes, new dreams, and new plans can and will take their place. But first, you have to come to terms with your feelings and find ways of managing them. In 1969, a psychiatrist by the name of Dr. Kubler-Ross theorized that grief comes in 5 stages. Those stages are denial, anger and resentment, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Dr. Kubler-Ross's theory and use of the term stages implies that you start at one end and work right through to the other. In my experience, I don't think grief is that simple and straightforward. I think all emotions that I've just mentioned are definitely involved, but I don't think people living with Parkinson's go systematically from one stage to another, get to the final acceptance stage, and then that's all there is to it, done and dusted. It simply doesn't work that way. Sure, you may go through all the stages and accept your new norm as your current symptoms get under control, but then something else happens. A new symptom comes along, or an old one gets worse, and you start the grieving process all over again. You just get one limitation mastered, and a new one comes along. So you get through the door of acceptance, make a wrong turn, and suddenly find yourself back at the beginning, once again lost in denial, and say, "This just can't be happening. This just isn't right." Again, That is why it's so important to examine your feelings, understand them, and learn how to manage them so you can move on. All of this holds true for care partners and family members too, not just for those of you with Parkinson's. Care partners often feel guilty because they find themselves being angry with their partner for ruining their plans for the future, taking up all their free time, receiving all the attention, and so on. Care partners are in denial if you say, "Oh no, I never feel that way." Personally, I don't believe you. So the sooner everyone accepts the fact that grief is our normal, natural, and necessary response to loss, the better. The 5 stages of grief are also typically the 5 stages of accepting a chronic illness, which is why I have spent time today explaining them to you. I've also added a 6th stage, which, in my experience, everyone with Parkinson's goes through. So now I'm going to look at them individually to help you identify where you are in this very difficult, complicated maze of emotions. Again, I want to stress that everyone goes through these stages, that not everyone, I should say, goes through these stages in the same order. And it is common to go back and forth between stages as your physical health improves or worsens over time. So first, let's talk about denial and shock. I think it's safe to say that virtually everyone uses denial as the first coping strategy upon hearing those words, "You have Parkinson's." I often think of it like rushing into a room and slamming the door in order to escape and try to calm down. You might say something like, "This isn't happening. This simply can't be happening." Denial is a stage that makes us feel like we're in control and actually lures us into a false sense of security because we try to cut ourselves off from things we don't want to hear. Denial is normal and healthy to a point. It can become your new best friend for a while. Again, everyone is different, and people spend varying amounts of time in denial. As I said, it is normal and healthy to a point. But if it interferes with what you need to do in order to manage your symptoms, then that's a problem. If, for example, you convince yourself that you don't have Parkinson's and therefore refuse to take your medication, even though your stiffness and slowness prevent you from doing anything and everything, or you refuse to do any exercises because, of course, you don't have Parkinson's, so you don't need to exercise, then ignoring your doctor's advice is actually allowing your Parkinson's to take control of you rather than the other way around. Even when you do venture out of denial into another part of the emotional maze, a new symptom may put you right back in it. The next stage of the emotional process is anger. Obviously, it is normal to be angry when you receive a diagnosis of Parkinson's. Anger may be pointed at the doctor who made the diagnosis. You might blame yourself for somehow causing the illness. You may even feel angry at members of your family because they don't have Parkinson's, or your friends for that matter. You may say, "It's not fair. Why me?" The best way to minimize anger is to find outlets for it, because again, it's a healthy emotion. You have to find ways of coping with it. So, in order to minimize your anger, you need to find outlets for it, because if you surrender to it, and allow it to affect everything you do, and you just become really nasty and grumpy, then the disease wins, and I don't think any of us wants that. It may be helpful to find a time and a place where you can allow yourself to express your anger. A space where you can scream, punch pillows, throw things, preferably not breakable ones, but throw things all the same. Maybe you can find a space outdoors where you can do things like throw rocks into a pond or stamp your feet. You may need to go into your car, regardless of whether you're driving or not, because you can scream at the top of the lungs, and that can be very therapeutic, especially if you put the radio on so nobody else can hear those screams. Writing in a journal has been helpful for some people. They can write about how they feel. Do whatever it takes to help you feel better, as long as it's not harmful for you, of course, or harmful for anyone else. Bargaining is the next step on the way to acceptance. This is the stage where deals are made, sometimes with God or a higher power, sometimes with your care partner, and sometimes even with yourself. This is the stage where you might be thinking, God, if you would just make it so that I don't have Parkinson's, I promise I will blank, blank, blank. That blank may be, I promise I'll stop drinking. I promise I'll start exercising. I promise I'll spend more time with my family. I promise I'll go to church every Sunday. Whatever you think will make God happiest. You may even make good on some of your promises, but most people move on from this stage when they realize that no matter what they promise to do, Parkinson's is here to stay, and nothing you can do or say is going to change that. Fear. This is the stage I have added. Fear is an underlying emotion that comes with having a condition that can't be cured. Some people with Parkinson's stop planning ahead or making life changes because they believe they won't be around much longer. They believe, falsely believe, that Parkinson's is actually life-threatening. It is not. These beliefs usually stem from the fact that people actually know very little about the disease, and, in some cases, their vision of Parkinson's is based on someone that they've known in the past with very advanced Parkinson's, or that they may have seen on TV, or they may have known somebody who had Parkinson's before the invention of levodopa occurred. That miraculous medication that you all take on a daily basis. Combating fear belongs and begins with education and support. And the more people learn about Parkinson's, the more they feel in control of it. The next stage, so we're on to stage number 5 now, that's depression and anxiety. I believe it is the most difficult of the stages to go through. Anxiety and depression are difficult all on their own, but because they are also common symptoms of Parkinson's, and because Parkinson's affects areas of the brain that actually controls mood, that makes this stage even all the more challenging. It is very easy and normal to get depressed, and this phase of the journey usually starts after you realize that being angry and proposing deals has provided no positive results. Remember what I said earlier, everyone goes through these stages differently. So like everything else, depression can begin at any time. And for some people, depression can actually be an early sign of the disease process. Depression can begin even before the motor symptoms. There are two basic types of depression. The first one is what we call reactive depression. This is a normal emotion to being diagnosed with a chronic and progressive disease, such as Parkinson's. Just living with Parkinson's and the challenges it brings with it causes stress and sadness too. I know I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. The other kind of depression is known as a clinical depression because, as I said a few minutes ago, Parkinson's affects areas of the brain that control mood as well as movement. So, just as the chemical dopamine changes in the brain, causing your ability to be able to move the way you want to be compromised, other chemicals, such as serotonin, are also affected, which is where the clinical depression comes from, as serotonin is responsible for our mood control. Anxiety often occurs with depression. It can also occur all on its own, but it most often occurs with depression. And like depression, it can begin again even before the motor symptoms. An important thing to understand is that anxiety is often worse when you are off, i.e., when your medication is not working effectively. So adjusting your anti-Parkinson's medications to prevent wearing off is often very helpful. If you have excessive worry about everyday things you can't control, or if you're having bursts of anxiety where you feel like you're having a heart attack or you're even short of breath and very panicky, it is important to seek the advice of your neurologist or your GP, as there are treatment options and you don't need to suffer needlessly. At least 1/3 of individuals with Parkinson's experience depression and anxiety, and this is one stage in which it is very easy to spend a great deal of time and can range from weeks to months depending on your particular situation. The sooner you ask for help, the sooner you will get to the last but most important stage. That is the acceptance stage. Finally, after going through all those other very difficult stages, you get to this place. And even if you don't stay here forever, it will give your emotional and physical being the chance to restore itself. All the stages we have discussed today are very draining and very stressful, which, as I'm sure you're all very aware, exacerbates the symptoms of Parkinson's. Now, in acceptance, you have come to terms with your illness. You have learned about it, and most importantly, you have found ways to cope with it effectively. Acceptance by no means that you are surrendering yourself to the disease. It does mean, however, that you are being honest with yourself, that you are being realistic about what you can and cannot do. You've learned that while you cannot control having the diagnosis of Parkinson's, you can control what you do about it on a regular basis, such as taking your medications on time, every time, doing exercises, getting involved with a support group, basically living your life to the fullest, and asking for help when necessary. Many people experience these stages several times during their Parkinson's journey, and it seems like no sooner do you come to terms with your new norm that something else changes, and you can find yourself starting all over again. You may be accepting one day and then be angry again the next. That's just a normal part of the process of learning to deal with your emotions. Managing a long-term illness brings with it emotional upheaval, but at the same time, it brings triumphant feelings and strength that come with overcoming these obstacles. These are the ups that I referred to in my title at the beginning of the day. There is no question about the fact that Parkinson's has changed your life, but it doesn't mean that that's necessarily always a bad thing. Many people I have met, while they are not thrilled about having Parkinson's, realize that it has changed their priorities in a very positive way. They may have been focused on making money, on just absolutely making their golf game the very, very best that it could be, climbing the corporate ladder, etc. But now they are more focused on their relationships with their families and friends. Not a bad thing. With each success comes the confidence that you are able to live a full, rewarding life, and a more meaningful life than if you hadn't gotten Parkinson's. My first experience came with this shortly after I started to work with people with Parkinson's back in 1998. That was the year that Michael J. Fox disclosed to the world that he had been secretly fighting with his diagnosis of Parkinson's for over 7 years. The worldwide response was staggering, as no one, not even the most experienced movement disorder specialist in the whole world, saw this coming. For me, it taught me how effective Parkinson's medications are and how well Parkinson's can be managed. The fact that this young man was seen on the big screen and in movies, as well as on television, on a regular basis all throughout that 7 years, and was able to pretend that there was nothing wrong, gave me a great sense of hope that people can live well with Parkinson's. Did Michael J. Fox go through the grieving process I have just outlined for you? Absolutely, positively. Fortunately, by the time of his disclosure to the rest of us, he had actually gone to, and had been able to accept the diagnosis. So by the time the public started to grieve for him, he had stopped grieving for himself. He had stopped grieving for himself in very positive ways. In his book, Lucky Man, he said, "If you were to rush into this room right now and announce that you had struck a deal with God or Allah or Buddha or Krishna or even with with Bill Gates, whoever you had been talking to and struck a deal with, in which the 10 years since my diagnosis could be magically taken away and traded in for 10 more years of me being as the person I was before, I would, without a moment's hesitation, tell you to take a hike off the nearest bridge." So the 6 emotions I have talked to you about today are not the only ones you're likely to encounter. Here are a few others, and I'm sure you have others that you could add to my list as well. Guilt. You may start thinking, what have I done to my spouse and my family? Or, if only I hadn't done, and then you fill in the blanks. Guilt is actually anger turned inward, and we use that anger to try to beat ourselves into submission, or use it as a punishment for something that you did and that you now regret. Panic is another emotion, which is, as I said before, it's the very most complex form of anxiety. And again, it's very common, where you are afraid that you simply won't be able to cope with your symptoms going forward, especially as no one can tell you what's in store for you in the future. You may also sense a feeling of extreme urgency when you think about all the things you want to do in your lifetime and wonder if you're going to have time to do them. Hostility, again, like anger, is an emotion that people are often embarrassed to admit that they feel, and yet it is only human nature to feel this degree of anger and resentment at times, especially toward people around you who are healthy and enjoying life without any of the challenges that you are dealing with. I hope that my chat with you so far today has provided you with a better understanding of your emotions and reassured you that you have a right to your feelings, that you are not alone, that your feelings are normal and are only one aspect of learning for you to cope with your Parkinson's. So far, the take-home message here is that coming to terms with your disease involves many emotions, and you will most likely experience them more than once during your journey. There is no roadmap for dealing with these stages of accepting a chronic illness, so don't expect to go from 1 to 2 to 3 in any kind of order. What stage you are in depends a great deal, again, on what is currently happening in your life. The challenge is not to get stuck in any one stage. It is important to stay in the various stages for a while and then move on again. And there is no structure to say, you will stay in this particular stage for 2 or 3 days, or 2 or 3 weeks, or even for 2 or 3 months. But staying in one stage for weeks on end can be destructive and will make your Parkinson's even more difficult to cope with. Do not be embarrassed to seek a professional help and talk to a healthcare professional and therapist or a counselor or a group to help to overcome your feelings. There is no shame in recognizing that you can't do it alone. I know it's hard to find acceptance when you know that having Parkinson's is ultimately going to change your life and interfere with your plans, your hopes, and your dreams. But you will get there. It is perfectly normal for this diagnosis to send you into a tailspin, leave you positively reeling. After all, this wasn't on your radar and isn't anything you were even considering would ever happen to you, or you could have seen coming. So don't be too hard on yourselves for having feelings that are foreign to you and make you feel uncomfortable. So many people have shared with me, but it's not like me to feel angry. It's not like me to feel so anxious and upset. It's not like me to feel so sad or resentful or mad at the world. I don't want to be the person I've become. I'm hoping that now that you know that you are in no way abnormal or strange, you will know that you can learn to deal with these emotions. You will adjust to your new reality, and you can start to move on with a sense of hope, healing, and integration. I started out today talking about the stages of grief, which, again, are the same as the stages of accepting an illness. I also talked about the fact that grief is usually associated with the loss or death of someone who's important to you. Parkinson's will bring up losses on multiple levels, and I'm going to spend the final part of my chat today talking with you, those of you who have Parkinson's and those of you who are partners of people with Parkinson's, about the losses. Of course, I can't possibly know about your personal and specific losses, so I'm going to talk about the losses you may have experienced in very broad and general terms, based on the many conversations that I've had with folks just like you over the years. My goal in doing this is to help you to understand again your emotions and hopefully develop some coping strategies. I hope some of the losses that I talk about are ones that you can identify with. Because you are all different, you definitely won't all experience every one I mention. So I'm going to start with the losses and emotions that those of you with Parkinson's may have experienced. You may have experienced the loss of independence and a sense of being in control, the loss of your previous body image, and all in all, the loss of your previous sense of yourself as a whole. You may have experienced a change or a loss in your dreams and plans for the future, the loss of easy mobility and spontaneity, where you can go when and how and where you want at any given moment. The loss of physical comfort for those of you who are experiencing pain and discomfort. The loss of your ability to be able to engage in certain activities that you did enjoy in the past. The loss of your sense of dignity. The loss of privacy. Changes in your relationship with your partner. The fear of becoming a burden. I've heard that one many, many, many times. The fear and loss of what's going to happen to you in the future, and are you going to be able to cope with it? Depression and anxiety, of course. You may have experienced prejudice from the community, such as people assuming you are drunk if you have dyskinesias, or assuming that you have dementia because you lack some facial expression and have slowed thought processes or some word-finding problems. You may have experienced the loss of friends and other supports. People don't know how to deal with Parkinson's. They don't know how to deal with your Parkinson's, your symptoms, and that can make them feel uncomfortable. And as a result, they stop visiting and calling, and that is a very big loss for many people. Some of you who are diagnosed at an earlier age have experienced the loss of your ability to work, which in turn can lead to the loss of financial stability, as well as the loss of your previous sense of identity and purpose. Hearing this staggering array of potential losses probably makes you feel like hanging up on me right now. And as I said earlier, you won't all experience all of these emotions and losses, but I'd be willing to bet that many of you can identify with several of the ones I've just mentioned. The longer these issues remain hidden and you pretend that they don't bother you or refuse to talk about them, the harder it will be to adjust, adapt, and get the help you need. For those of you who are care partners on the line today, some of the feelings and emotions you may experience are things like shock and confusion, especially at the beginning of this journey. You may experience grief for the loss of what you knew as your life as it was, and fear of the future progression, and whether or not you're going to be able to cope with that. You may feel grief at the loss of your identity, as well as the loss of your independence as the person you are caring for increases in their needs to have you help them. You may feel the need to neglect your own health and that your needs don't matter anymore. You may regret the changes that Parkinson's has made to your relationship. You used to share everything and make decisions together, and now you may feel the need to protect your loved one and that it is up to you to make decisions. You may feel that you've lost your lifetime partner in that way. You may grieve about the loss of your goals and the plans for your future, as well as your future together. Plans that took years in the making and now might not be able to be realized. You both started your life's journey as a couple, as partners in care. And while you are still partners who care very much for each other, now you may be a caregiver. You are experiencing or may experience what is known as anticipatory grief or preparatory grief, when you are caring for someone with a chronic progressive illness and requires adjustments to ongoing changes and losses. You may feel both physically and emotionally upset. You may have difficulty sleeping. You may have lack of energy. You may be irritable. You may experience weight gain or weight loss. You may have headaches, stomach aches, back and shoulder pain. So whether you are the person with Parkinson's or the caregiver, you will get to the acceptance stage and you also will be able to move forward. This comes when you're able to develop a realistic expectation and understanding of your situation. It does not come easily, but it will come. Ignoring your grief won't make it go away. You have all developed coping strategies throughout your lives that have helped you deal with adversity and survive it. Those coping strategies will stand you in good stead for this too. One of the first things that I learned from a person with Parkinson's many years ago is that Parkinson's only slows down the timing of your accomplishments. Do not let Parkinson's daunt your fortitude. Another individual taught me the importance for people with Parkinson's to take charge of it. She said, "Sandy, make sure you tell people their motto from now on must be, Parkinson's lives with me. I don't live with Parkinson's." Similar words, but very different meanings. The words Parkinson's lives with me puts you in charge and doesn't let Parkinson's define who you are. So in summary, I called my chat today the emotional roller coaster, the ups and downs of adjusting to Parkinson's. And while I may have focused on sadness and losses that you have experienced, I am also very aware that there are many positive aspects about learning to live with Parkinson's. Only you know what coping skills you have that will fit best with your personality and your lifestyle. As I said earlier, one way to examine your own style of coping is to recall the ways you've dealt with painful times in the past. Each of us has an individual style of coping. So while you are dealing with the losses, use your past experiences to help you generate ideas about how to manage your current feelings. You survived before, and you'll definitely survive now. Here are a few examples I've heard of from people living with Parkinson's of what they did to cope that has inspired me, and I hope they will provide some inspiration for you as well. We booked a cruise that we had been putting off until just the right time. The right time was suddenly here. I had been planning to go hiking in Nepal, but never quite got around to it. So I put on my hiking boots, laced up those laces, booked a plane trip, and enjoyed every minute of it. I needed to allow more time, and I took shorter hikes and smoother terrains but I did it. Before my diagnosis, I had no hobbies. All I did was work. I found that I had a creative side within me that I never knew I had. I now can write poetry and short stories. I paint with watercolors as well as sketch and draw. I always wanted to learn how to fly fish, and now my hip waders and I are new best friends. I find myself taking advantage of new opportunities I never would have dreamt of doing before. I even went skydiving. Opportunities are out there. You just have to pay attention when they come knocking on your door. Most people with Parkinson's, myself included, like to have everything planned. PD had thrown a wrench into that idea, so I decided to embrace it. If it's a good day, we go for picnics. We go for walks. We even go dancing. I enjoyed a support group, and I enjoyed it. I joined a support group, I should say, and now I don't feel isolated. I know I'm not alone. I realized that my well-meaning friends were avoiding discussing the fact that I have Parkinson's because they didn't want to make me feel bad, and they simply didn't know what to say, especially when they saw me struggling. So, I took the bull by the horns. I educated them about Parkinson's, and I asked for their help when I needed it. They felt empowered to help me and continue to include me in their activities to this day. It's important to find ways to ask for assistance in a way where you don't have to give up your dignity. Some days I have to say to myself, I really don't feel like it, but I'm going to do it anyway. Well, I joined a choir, so I would be encouraged to do my vocal exercises in the company of others. I exercise every day. That's been a big help in dealing with my emotions. I write in my journal every day. One day, I might not be able to read what I write, and when that day comes, I'll find another way to express my feelings, but I'll still keep on writing. One inspiring thing I read and had a lot of meaning for me is, there is a purpose to everything that happens to us. The choices we make determine where we end up. I believe we're here for a reason. We are on a journey. Some journeys are long and arduous, while others may be short-lived, but we all have a purpose. The chance to live our lives is a gift that we all have. It's up to you to choose how you take the journey. And for those of you who are caregivers, here are some excerpts from an article I recently read. It's entitled, Don't Give Advice to People Who Are Drowning. This is a quote from the article. It's clear to me that a lot of the advice offered to caregivers is given by people who have never cared for someone who has a chronic progressive condition, and or anyone who doesn't appreciate the challenges that caregivers face. If they did, they wouldn't make some of the suggestions they do. Ask for help is a tip I often see on caregivers' websites. So imagine this. A woman wades into the sea. She walks out from the safety of the beach. Suddenly, the seafloor drops off, and she gets caught in a powerful current. She starts to drown. A crowd of onlookers gathers at the shoreline, including several lifeguards. "Call for help! Call for help!" some of them yell at her. But no one does anything. No one steps into the water. No one tries to save her. No one tries to help her save herself. Ridiculous, right? A drowning person doesn't need to be told to cry for help. She needs someone to throw her a floating device. Even better, teach her how to swim in a strong current even before she gets into the water. Denial and pride, the mistaken belief that they can do it alone. The fear of being a burden on your children may stop you from researching and reaching out to ask for help from family and friends. Have you ever said to yourself, I'm going crazy here, and they won't lift a finger to help? It's not unusual for friends and family to inquire about the condition of your loved one and never think to ask about what's happening to you, the caregiver. As a caregiver, you have to learn that you cannot count on anyone who hasn't done what you're doing to recognize or understand how incredibly difficult this journey can be. That's why developing a plan of self-care is so important. Becoming aware of the specific issues that are causing you the greatest amount of stress is the first step. Caregivers are constantly dealing with circumstances that generate feelings of anger, fear, frustration, guilt, anxiety, depression, and grief. In order to stop these feelings from becoming overwhelming to you during the day, and also waking you up in the middle of the night, you need to start to make a list. Write down the specific things that are upsetting you. No, I'm not kidding. You really need to do this. Don't make judgments about whether you should or you shouldn't be upset. Don't worry about how anyone else will think or react. Be honest and don't hold back. The form doesn't matter. It's the process of getting it down on paper that's important. I have been told that there's something magical and amazingly cathartic about getting swirling thoughts out of your head and down on paper. The clarity that it brings doesn't make the problem go away, but it can help you make decisions on how you manage it. So today and every day, grab a pen and a piece of paper, or open a new document on your computer. Disengage your emotional monitor and write down the situations, people, and events that are upsetting you right now. Name them. Describe them in detail. And then, if you're afraid of how others might react, if they read your list, you can always hide it. Tuck it away someplace safe until you're ready to burn, shred it, or even share it. I want to read something to you that I found particularly helpful when I was not only learning about Parkinson's, but how difficult it can be to deal with a chronic illness. This is called When Life's Plans Take a Different Turn. Sometimes what we plan in life turns out to be totally different. When we recognize our life's plan, health issues can result in a very different plan, in a very different path. Becoming a caregiver can be like planning a trip to one place and landing in another. It's like planning a fabulous vacation to Italy. You buy a bunch of guidebooks and make your wonderful plans. The Colosseum, Michelangelo's David, the gondolas in Venice. You may even learn some handy phrases in Italian. It's all very exciting. After months of eager anticipation, the day finally arrives. You pack your bags and off you go. Several hours later, the plane lands. The flight attendant announces, "Welcome to Holland." Holland, you say? What do you mean, Holland? I signed up for Italy. I'm supposed to be in Italy. All my life I've dreamed of going to Italy. But there has been a change in the flight plan. You've landed in Holland, and here you must stay. The important thing is that you haven't been taken to a horrible, disgusting place. It's just a different place. So, what do? You must go out and buy new guidebooks. You must learn a whole new language. You will meet a whole new group of people you would never have met. It's just a different place. It has a slower pace. It's less flashy than Italy. But after you've been there for a while and you catch your breath, you look around and begin to notice that Holland has windmills. Holland has tulips. Holland even has Rembrandts. But everyone you know is busy coming and going from Italy. They're all bragging about what a wonderful time they had there. And for the rest of your life you will say, yep, that's where I was supposed to go. That's what I had planned. And the pain of that will never go away, because the loss of that dream is a very significant loss. But if you spend the rest of your life mourning the fact that you didn't get to Italy, you will never be free to enjoy the very special, the very lovely things about Holland. It may not have been in your life's plan, but when this happens, it's human nature to try to make the best of it. I think that speaks very clearly about the journey with Parkinson's. I have a couple of questions that I would like to respond to today before our time is up. One is that for someone who can no longer work, is there any financial compensation they can get while dealing with Parkinson's? And if so, what are the steps? There may be financial supports available for people. However, the programs may be a combination of both federal and provincial programs. There may also be certain options through your work and through your work plan. You may wish to discuss your situation one-to-one with our client services staff. To the person who sent this email to me, I intend to forward your email to our INR associate, that's Robert Tersteeg, and he will follow up with you. Another question I received today is walking good enough for exercise, or should more be done? The answer is yes and no. Walking is an excellent exercise for Parkinson's. The key to exercise really is finding an exercise that you enjoy doing, because if you don't enjoy it, you won't continue it. And exercise is not only important, it is essential for dealing with Parkinson's. So, yes, walking is good enough. More can be done. There are different exercise options out there. And if you find something else, as well as walking, that you would enjoy doing and that you will continue to do, that's fine too. So again, the most important thing about exercise is that you find something that you like to do, therefore you enjoy doing it, therefore you will do it on a regular basis. That's the most important key to exercise. There is no one exercise that has been shown to be the absolute best for people with Parkinson's. Just find something that you enjoy and keep doing it. The next question I have is, how do you get family to also accept the fact that you have Parkinson's? Well, that's a very difficult question to answer and deserves more than a short answer. I think the fact that one thing that you can do is educate the family, provide them with lots of reading material so that they too will understand, that they too will understand what's happening to you. Talk to them, educate them that way. But if the person who asked this question would like more information about helping your family to accept your Parkinson's, please don't hesitate to give me a call, 416-227-3375, or if you're listening long distance today, it's 1-800-565-3000, extension 3375. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today. I'll talk with you again soon. All the best. And don't forget, deal with those emotions. It will get you where you need to be, into acceptance. Take care, and bye for now.